distinguished guest, Professor David Gu, who got his bachelor degree from MBZUAI University and his master and PhD from Harvard University. Professor Gu is Sunny Empire Innovation Professor at the Computer Science Department in the State University of New York at Stony Brook, and he's the director of the 3D scanning laboratory. Is this enough? No. my colleague and friend, Professor Gu, is also affiliated with the Applied Mathematics Department at Stony Brook University, a Yao Mathematical Science Center at Tsinghua University, and the Center of Mathematical Science and Applications at Harvard. He is the chief scientist of Beijing Advanced Innovation Center for Imaging Technology. He has published more than 400 papers, 10 monographs, books, and about 15 patents. Many of them are already being used by companies such as Siemens, Google, HP, and Toyota. He has been very active in the scientific community, in fact, by co-chairing a large number of conferences, and by editing and guest editing special issues and transactions. But one of the things that I really want to mention here is that Dr. Yu is also a recipient of a Faculty Early Career Award and the National Science Foundation of China Outstanding Overseas Young Scholar Awards, and also the Morningside Gold Medal of Applied Mathematics, besides several Best Paper Awards. He has been selected as member of the National Academy of Inventors of the United States in 2020. So it's our great pleasure to have you here with us, David, and please, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Okay. So maybe I start with this kind of special episode. So in early 2018, French President Macron visited China, and the two governments organized a forum, okay, Sino-French AI forum in Beijing. And then I got the invitation from French embassy. Then I all the way flew to Beijing. Then I was asked to sign some research collaboration agreement between Chinese academic society and the French academic society. So at that time, I was surprised. Later, I understand, yeah, because this guy, yeah, he's Dr. Cedric Villani, okay, field medalist, 2010. Yeah, he's the top expert in optimal transport. So then, so since then, we promote optimal transport in computer vision field, in machine learning field, and nowadays, okay, optimal transport become a subfield in deep learning. So this year, there are a lot of submissions for ECCV, ICCV, yeah, and all the AAAI, all the related conferences. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about geometric understanding for deep learning through optimal transport. So I had a lot of collaborators, a lot of mathematicians and computer scientists, yeah, including my advisor, Professor Xingdong Yao, field medalist, and Professor Xujia Wang. Yeah, he's a top expert in optimal transport, and many others. So we know that deep learning is really successful, but the understanding of deep learning remains very primitive. So we try to answer the following three fundamental questions. So the first one, so what does a DL system really learn? Deep learning, what's the target to learn? Okay. The second one, how does a DL system really learn? So does it really learn or just memorize? So we know that deep neural network has a large capacity, so which can memorize all the training samples. And how can we justify whether it really learn or just memorize? So how well does the system learn? Does it really learn everything or have to forget something? Okay, so these are very fundamental problems, and different people has different opinions. So we try to get some deeper understanding through geometric point of view. Okay. So the first one, the goal for deep learning. So basically, we know that in computer vision, there is a very well accepted Holm height hypothesis. So which believes that So for human brain, so basically we do a inverse problem. So from retina image, we try to refer, okay, to the cause. So basically in deep learning language, so the brain learns a generative model. And the visual perception is to infer the latent variables of the generative model. So in this model, the latent space actually corresponding to our neurons. So each concept corresponding to a cluster of neurons. So then basically we treat the whole brain perception as a GAN model or generative model. Okay. So basically this can be summarized in the following manifold distribution principle. It's kind of like a physical law. So basically people accept it, but there's no mathematical proof for it. So each concept, okay, the invasion corresponding to a natural data class. Okay, you can treat it as a data site. Okay, then this data class can be treated as a probability distribution, but defined on the low dimensional manifold. So the data manifold is a very low dimension, but the manifold is embedded in a very high dimensional ambient space. Okay, so therefore, basically there are two keywords. One is the manifold, one is the probability. Okay, so then basically within each class there are different subclasses. So the distances among subclasses are far enough, so we can recognize, okay, each of them. So here I can show a very simple example to explain this idea. So everybody knows this Jan-LeCun's MNIST data set. So basically, the concept is 100 digits. Okay, so we have so many examples. Each example is a small image, 28 by 28. So we treat each image as one point. So the dimension of the point is 28 by 28, which is a 784 dimension. Okay, so therefore the image space is really high. The dimension is really high. But if we consider the point cloud for this data set, so each image is one point. We have collection data point. So the data point basically very close to a low dimensional manifold. Okay, so if we use a intensity embedding, we can embed every point here to the point on the plane. So each dot here goes back to one image. So the mapping is 1 to 1 on 2 and it continues. So this means that the point cloud dimension is only 2. So you see the difference, right? So each data point, the dimension is a 784, but the point cloud dimension is only 2. Okay? So therefore, the data manifold is a surface, but the surface is embedded in 784 dimensional space. Okay? So here we see we have 10 digits from 0 to 9. So here we see 10 different clusters. Okay? So each digit is corresponding to one cluster, but also the density are different. So in this visualization, we cannot represent the density, but we try to learn that. Okay. So here we see each digit corresponding to one cluster. So there are many different encoding methods. Okay, like MNIST. Okay, we embed the MNIST. Okay, to the plane. We can see the embedding here. So if we're using UMAP, we have a different embedding. Okay, still we see 10 cluster. Okay. So each cluster corresponding to one digit. Okay, so therefore you get the figure. Okay, so mathematically we can see that. So each concept corresponding to a natural class or image. Okay, in vision field. So the data points actually are distributed on a low dimensional manifold. Okay, so this manifold is embedded in a very high dimension image space. So for encoder, basically, we map each open set from manifold to the latent space. So the inverse, okay, is called decoder. Okay, but for each decoder, maybe we can focus on one open set. We can design different decoder. So therefore, the same data point has a different latent representation for feature vector. We have a transition map here. Okay, basically. So then we translate everything from deep learning to topology. Okay. So here we can visualize this concept using something visible. So here we have a Buddha surface. So the surface itself is a two-dimensional manifold, but embedded in R3, so the ambient space is 3-dimensional. Okay, so this is the data set. So then basically for encoding, we flatten the surface to the 2D plane. So the 2D plane is a latent space. So every sample here become to a feature vector. on the 2D. So this mapping is called encoding. Okay, but this mapping is one-to-one on two invertible, and the invert map is also continuous. So then this way is encoding, this way is decoding. Okay, but there are many different ways for encoder. So we can visualize, another encoder. So here we see we have different encoding map. This is one, this is another. Actually, there are infinite many. Okay, but then we consider the probability distribution on the manifold. Everything becomes different. So suppose we uniformly sample, okay, on the latent space. So when we pull back, okay, we get a non-uniform distribution on the manifold. Okay, so here you see the height part is sparse, body part is really dense. Okay, so this means that this encoding map, okay, destroys the uniform distribution. Okay, although we reduce the dimension, but we destroy the original distribution. But in contrast, if we're using this encoder, if we do uniform distribution here, when we pull back, we get a uniform distribution here. So this mapping actually, we reduce dimensionality, but also we preserve the distribution. So therefore, this is the final goal for deep learning. Basically, we try to reduce dimensionality of the data manifold from higher dimensional space to the latent space. Also, we preserve the distribution, okay, on the manifold. Okay, but for higher dimension, the computation is more difficult, but the principle is the same. Okay. So in summarize, basically, for deep learning, there are two central tasks. One is to learn the manifold structure. The second, we try to learn the probability distribution on the manifold. Okay, so we decouple deep learning task into two subtasks. Okay, so then we answer the first question. So what does a DL system really learn? They learn two things. One is the manifold, one is the distribution. Okay. So here we see a very generic, generative model. So suppose we have a mixed set. We do encoding, okay, to the latent space. We do decoding. We come back, okay, to the original data manifold. Okay, and in the latent space, we can define a uniform distribution or normal distribution, which is white noise. So we found a mapping from here to here. Okay, so then this mapping actually transforms the uniform distribution to the data distribution. So therefore, the distribution information, okay, is represented by this map. And this map is encoded by a neural network, basically. Okay, so this line, we learn the manifold, okay? And this part, we learn the distribution. So that's two major tasks for general DL system, okay? So if we consider real application instead of toy, we try to generate human facial photos. So same thing, we treat each photo as one point, okay, embed very high dimensional image space, and all the human face photos form a point cloud. Okay, we try to learn, okay, the dimensionality of this manifold. Okay, also we try to learn the distribution of this manifold. The same thing. Okay. So then in the latent space, we give a white noise. Okay, then using genetic model, we map this point, okay, to one point on the data manifold. We get a human face. Okay, so that's the basic principle. Okay, so using this method, we can reinterpret a lot of things. For example, we do image denoising. So basically, suppose we have a noisy image, okay, like human facial photo. So we use a clean human facial photo to train a manifold. Okay, so then we do projection from P tilde to P, so that we find the nearest point, okay, on the manifold. So P actually is the nearest point, then P is the clean image, okay, denoise from P tilde. So therefore, this gives you a way to convert image denoising to projection. Okay, so image denoising becomes geometric projection. So let me show this example. So given human face, okay, we add in noise, okay, then we project to the original manifold. So we denoise, we can see the result here. So in this picture, basically, we encode all the prior knowledge, okay, into this manifold. So therefore, this method gives us better denoising result than conventional method like low-pass filtering. But this method depends on the data set. So if we're using the cat face to train a manifold, then we project a noisy human face, okay, onto the cat face. So the image we get is a mixture between the human being and the cat. So therefore, this method heavily depends on the data. Okay, let's see. Okay.
Oh, very quick question.
Sure.
Here, how do you measure the closeness? Because you want to project data onto the manifold.
Right. So everything is in Euclidean space. So we know this. Yeah. So basically, we can find the nearest point using low rank. Okay. So mathematically, there are a lot of theorems which can support this argument. So suppose we want to do pattern recognition. Suppose we have two clusters. So then Eureka lemma claim that. So if we can find a two closed set, okay, A and B, okay, then there must be a continuum function, okay, and map A to 0, map B to 1, okay. So then this continuum function can be approximated by deep neural network, okay. So if the data set can be covered by by closed subsets, so they can be recognized, okay, in theory. For manifold embedding, so there's this famous general position theorem. So the manifold could be twisted, okay, could be knotted, okay, entangled, yeah. But if the embedding space, okay, the dimensionality is high enough, so basically everything can be disentangled, okay, and knots, okay. So that's why for all the encoder at the beginning, okay, the network can become wider and wider. We increase the dimension for the embedding space such that we unknot the manifold itself. So after that, we do projection, okay. So such kind of topological theorem can give us a lot of insights. So we know Whitney embedding given arbitrary m-dimensional manifold, okay. So then we can smoothly embed, okay, this manifold in 2m-dimensional Euclidean space. So basically, we can construct an atlas cover the manifold, and which give us partition unity. So then we embed each open set, okay. Then we glue all the local embedding into global embedding. So then we do random projection. So if you are familiar with UMAP computational method, you will see the design of UMAP is exactly follow this logic, okay, but using different language, okay. So therefore, using this general manifold embedding theorem, basically we can guarantee, okay, us to learn the manifold structure. So then how do we really learn? Basically, everything is based on this Hilbert 13th problem. So we know that conventionally, we're using splines, we use a finite element to approximate, okay, arbitrary function. In deep learning, so we're using this kind of Kolmogorov Arnold representation. So we claim the following. Suppose we have multiple variable, okay, continuous function, so which can be, okay, approximated by simple function, okay, only one variable, but with compositions. So by composing simple functions, we can approximate arbitrary high-dimensional, okay, smooth function. So basically, so there are a lot of research along this line. So give you a class function. So what kind of architecture we can design? Okay, how many layers the width of layer to approximate the function? Okay, but the foundation is there already. Okay, so therefore we can uniformly, universally approximate any smooth function. Okay. So therefore, for all the neural network, basically we try to represent mappings between Euclidean spaces. So then for complicated mappings, we can approximate it using the simple ones. Okay. So therefore, we have this landscape, okay, spaces, functions, or mappings. So the idea is that, so given, okay, one mapping here, you can find a finite member of subgroup, okay, the composition, okay, can approximate any number here. So then for this level, we can find a simple subgroup and go to all the end, okay. So commonly used today, actually, the homeomorphism group are the following. So the most general one is a C2 diffeomorphism, okay. So in this big space, we can find a diffeomorphism with a complex part. That's the first level. And this one can be approximated by the flow mappings. Okay. So the flow mappings can be approximated by the mapping very close to identity. Okay. So in this level, we can use a deep neural network for very accurately approximate. So there are a lot of recent works which can control the Jacobian for every step. Basically, the goal is try to use a subgroup, okay, and to approximate complicated ones along this direction. Okay. So here we can analyze a very simple example. We see this is a common autoencoder. So basically, we have two symmetric neural network. So in the bottleneck layer, we have only two nodes. So that means, okay, the latent space is two-dimensional. So the loss function is a difference between the input and the output. So namely, we try to get a map which is identical, okay, on the network. So therefore, this part is a smooth mapping. This part is smooth mapping. They are inverse to each other. Therefore, from here to here, it must be homeomorphism. Okay, so that's the ideal case. So we use this model to do a manifold embedding. That one shown here. So we have a surface, okay, which is a two-dimensional manifold. We put 3,000 points, okay, on the surface. Using the autoencoder, we can flatten the surface to the two-dimensional plane. Okay, using decoder, we can recover the surface. So if you compare this one with this one, you see they are very close to each other, but not exact. So all the fingers, okay, all the toes actually are expanded. So there is no self-intersection, there's no flipping. So the mapping is a homeomorphic. Okay, basically for the lower dimensions, you can visualize everything. Okay, so therefore using the autoencoder, you can do simple, okay, manifold embedding. Okay. Okay. So here we use a ReLU neural network. So basically, the mapping can be written down as a piecewise linear. So this is linear map. Okay, this is ReLU function, linear map, ReLU function. We have a finite composition. Okay. Be faster. Okay. Given two samples, okay, in the input space. So if they activate the same path, okay, in the network, we say they are equivalent. Okay. So this defines the equivalence relation among the input points. Okay. So this relation will partition the whole surface to cells. So each class basically give you one cell, and this cell structure can be realized. Okay. And one shown here. So the input is a three-dimensional unit cube. Then we partition, okay, the input into the cell position. And then each cell, okay, is a color in one color. So here we do the same thing for the latent space. So basically, between the corresponding cell, the mapping is linear. So therefore, you see the total mapping basically is a piecewise linear. For decoder, basically we have more partitions, it becomes more complicated, but also it's a piecewise linear. So from this point of view, we see that, okay, for ReLU DNN, it's similar to finite element. We use a piecewise linear map to approximate the arbitrary nonlinear map. So then you can see that. So if we have more cells, okay, then the complexity, the capability for representation is higher. Okay, we can approximate more complicated mappings. So this inspires us to define the following learning capability. So if we fix a ReLU DNN, we consider, okay, the upper bound, okay, for the number of cells. Okay, so that number gives us the measurement for the learning capability. So this number can be estimated using computational method, basically. But on the other hand, given a manifold, so like this one, we can project it, okay, to the straight line here. Okay, the mapping is 1, 1. But for this one, no matter which direction you project, you can never get one product. So therefore, you have to partition this one to different segments and linearly embed each segment. Okay. So then the minimum number for such kind of partition give you the complexity for the manifold, okay, or the difficulty for the manifold. So therefore, we can see that suppose we have a ReLU DNN, okay, which can learn a manifold, if and only if the capability, okay, is greater than the difficulty. Okay, so this gives you quantitatively measurement. Okay, so this part is easy to compute, and this part is only conceptual. Okay, but for a simple case, we can estimate the complexity for manifold. So everybody knows Peano curve. So we can define Peano curve recursively. So basically, we can prove that the complexity actually can be written down using this power representation. So therefore, if you have a ReLU DNN, you just construct such kind of Peano curve and increasing the complexity, you will find the upper bound. Okay, So this gives you a practical way to test the learning capability for any given renewal DNN. Okay. But then we can compare the deep learning method with a classical method. Okay. So we consider the low dimensional manifold. So here we show a well-known conformal map. So suppose we have a decalog kilos king David head. So we can flatten the shape on the 2D rectangle. Okay, so we map from 3D to 2D. So all the features you can see the eye, okay, and the ear are well preserved. Okay, so this kind of mapping has a special name, which is called angle preserving, which can be understood this way. Okay, suppose we have a human face surface here. So you draw two curves, okay, on the face. So after mapping, you flatten the face to the 2D disk. So you map 3D curve to 2D curve. The intersection angle doesn't change. So this curve you can draw anywhere, okay? But the angle always preserved, okay? So this kind of mapping is called Riemann mapping. Then in differential geometry, there's a very fundamental theorem called uniformization. So which claims that, so for arbitrary shape, no matter how complicated the topology is or the geometry is, so they can always conformally flatten to one or three canonical shapes. So either sphere, okay, or Euclidean plane, or hyperbolic space, okay. So for surfaces with boundaries, same picture holds, okay. Basically, we map each boundary to a geodesic circles here. So therefore, these 6 images unify all the shapes in the world. So namely, if you know how to compute this kind of mapping, you can convert any geometric processing problems from 3D to 2D. Okay. And also this mapping preserves geometric features. So then, so we spent several years, okay, to develop the computational method. So in history, this is called Poincare-Kolbe uniformization theorem, and we proved the discrete version, okay, and published in different geometry. The review takes more than 4 years. Okay, so this so far this is the only proof, okay, for such kind of theoretical result, and it's the only method which can compute a Riemann metric tensor. Okay, so basically from this method you can unify all the shapes, okay, in the universe to 3 canonical shapes. But we try to use a deep learning method to calculate such a mapping, give you arbitrary, okay, complicated shape, okay, to flatten. Okay, so far deep learning cannot do that. So the tricky part is as follows. So we see that, so when we map a topological difficult shapes, okay, on the 2D plane, there is some symmetry pattern. So this symmetry, okay, actually should be part of the learning task, and it's really difficult. But also the mapping is angle preserving, so it's not arbitrary angle, it's not arbitrary mapping, so it's really hard to control the mapping quality. Okay, so that means that the precision for deep learning, for meta learning, is not as high as conventional method so far. Okay, it's still developing. Okay, so the method is based on something called a receive flow, so which the method used by Paravan to prove Poincare conjecture. So the idea is basically we deform Riemann metric proportional to the current Gaussian curvature. Okay, so this is the only method so far which can compute the metric tensor. Okay, it will be very interesting. How can you generalize this method to higher dimensional manifold? So far, there's no method for three-dimensional, no method for 4-dimensional, only the surface. Okay, so even in theory, 4-dimensional manifold is valid. Okay, so that's the first task. The second task is for probability measure learning. How can we learn the probability? Okay. So, so here we see that for all the genetic model, we map a white noise, okay, to a point on the manifold. Okay. So the most popular models are GANs, okay, and also diffusion model and the flow-based method. Okay, we try to analyze all of them. Okay. So here we show the GAN model. So basically, we do decoding. We map, okay, the data set to the latent space. So in the latent space, we have a white noise. We calculate a transport map. Okay. So then we use computer to generate a random sample here. After transport, we get a point here. Then by decoder, we get an image. So this path is called generator. Okay. So then we have a true data here. We have fake example here. We try to compare these two. This is called discriminator. So therefore, for GAN model, we have both generator and the discriminator. Okay. So good final give us the following diagrams to explain the idea. For generator, we transform the white noise in latent space to this green distribution. For discriminator, we compare a real distribution and the fake distribution. Okay, so basically they compete with each other and reach the Nash equilibrium. Okay, so using our language, so basically we have a latent space, we have white noise. The generator transform this guy to a fake distribution on the data manifold. So on the data manifold, the discriminator compare these two distributions. So basically this arrow is the transportation map. This is another transportation map. So you'll see the real key is you try to find a map mapping from one distribution to another distribution. So that's why optimal transport is everywhere. Okay. So now we can introduce the framework for OT theory. So the big picture is as follows. So given a Riemannian manifold, now X, we consider all the possible probability distributions. So all the distributions form a infinite dimensional manifold, which is called Wasserstein space. So for all the deep learning, so basically we try to find a special distribution which optimizes some special energy. Okay, so that means deep learning means we want to do optimization in this space. So therefore, we need to define a variational approach, on this space. There must be something called a covariant calculus and a Riemannian metric for this infinite dimensional manifold. And in theory, so the OT theory offers such kind of Riemannian metric and offers such kind of covariant calculus. Therefore, we can do optimization. Okay, so that's the theoretic foundation for all the deep learning. Okay, so without such kind of Riemannian metric or covariant calculus, we cannot do optimization. Okay. In summary, so basically we can just put everything here. Suppose we are given two distribution. We know the density function. So the optimal transport is given by convex function u. The gradient gives us the mapping, and u satisfies such kind of motion pay equation. So you'll see this equation. We calculate the Hessian matrix. Calculate the determinant of this matrix given by the ratio between the densities. So this part is highly nonlinear. So therefore, intrinsically, OT map is highly nonlinear. It's a nonlinear problem. Okay. So suppose we know the mapping, then we can control the geodesic. So basically, given each t, we can construct a special distribution along this path. Okay. So each point is one distribution connecting to a given distribution, and this is a geodesic in the Wasserstein space. Okay. So basically, the tangent vector, for every probability measure, is a vector field on the base manifold. Okay, a vector on the Wasserstein space, is a vector field on the base manifold. The inner product, of tangent vector is given by this integration. So therefore, everything is well defined. But the dimension is an infinite dimension. Okay. So if we review the history, so more than 350 years ago, Monge proposed this problem. So basically, given two distribution, how can we find the optimal transportation map T, which minimize the total transportation cost? So suppose we have some kind of product in the society. So we have a producer and a consumer. So basically, we try to design a transportation plan such that the production and consumption are balanced. So then among all such kind of plans, we found the one with a minimal transportation cost. So that's the problem. So then such kind of transportation cost is called Wasserstein distance. Then the Kantor-Roach relaxed Monge problem from mapping a plan and define this this setup. And he got a Nobel Prize in 1975 in economics. So then so if we're using Lagrange method, we can convert Kantor-Roach problem to this field setting. And from this field setting, we introduce another concept called C transform. Okay, using C transform, we can further simplify the formulation. So if you read all the OT papers in deep learning, most of them actually are working on this setup. 99% basically. But then the advisor of Milani is called Brunier, and he developed the following theorem. So basically, if the transmission cost is L2, in that case, the OT map is given by a convex function, which is called Brunier potential. The gradient of Brunier potential gives us the map. And such kind of Brunier potential satisfies the motion P. So that's the classical theory so far. But as a geometer, so we are very familiar with this PDE, the motion P PDE. So this one actually has a very strong geometric meaning. So therefore, through this PDE, we bridge statistics and the different geometry. So now we come to the geometry. Geometry is much easier to understand. So in 1950, Alexander proved the following theorem. Suppose we have a convex polytope. So we know the normal to each face, and also we know the area of each face. So then we can determine the shape, of this convex polytope, unique up to vertical translation. So if you write down the PDE for this problem, you get exactly the same PDE as this one. So therefore, if you can solve Alexander problem, you can calculate Brunier potential, same thing. But this picture is much easier to understand. So unfortunately, his original proof is based on algebraic topology, which is not constructive. So in order to compute it, so in 2013, we developed a geometric variation approach. So we found a convex energy. By minimizing this energy, we can solve the Alexander problem. So we publish in the mathematics journal, and that means we can solve optimal transform. Through this geometric approach. So here I visualize the computation process. So just now we mentioned river mapping. Suppose we have a 3D surface. We flatten to the 2D plane. So then we carry the area element, from surface to the 2D plane. So therefore we define a density function, on the disk. But on the disk we have another density. We have a uniform distribution. So therefore we can calculate the OT map between two densities. So this one induced by the river mapping. So then this gives you the uniform distribution. And according to Alexander or Brunier, so this mapping is given by a convex function. So then we can visualize the calculation result. So this is the convex Brunier potential or Alexander surface. The good thing is the inverse mapping is also optimal. So therefore, the inverse mapping is also a gradient for another Brunier potential. So these two potentials, they differ by something called the rounded-due, or C transform. So everything can be realized, and understand very easily. But so if we do not consider the optimal transport, we consider the worst transport. So among all possible mappings, we try to find one which maximizes the total transmission cost. So the theory is exactly symmetric. So therefore, such kind of map exists and is unique. And this map is also given by a concave function. So we can calculate the concave potential, and we can visualize the worst transport map. So we published this result in the medical imaging journal, medical imaging. So this so far is the only method. So I'm wondering why nobody really care about this in vision field. Maybe, but you get something very symmetric theoretically. You can do a lot of shape analysis based on this idea. But now we know that if we change the manifold from Euclidean to spherical, so what will happen? So that is called the Minkowski problem. Suppose we have a closed polytope. We know the normal, to each face. We know the area of each face. Then the Minkowski said we can determine the shape unique up to translation. Okay. So then how can we solve this problem? Okay. So this can be converted to the following open problem proposed by Professor Yao. Okay. So in 1993, Professor Yao said, so basically give you the Gaussian curvature, can you determine the convex shape? Okay. How can we find a computation method to solve that? Okay. So then we solved this problem years ago. So here we show a meaning. So this is a mass Planck surface. We conformally map to the unit sphere. So then this mapping carry the surface area element from surface, okay, to the unit sphere. But on the unit sphere, we have uniform distribution. We have two distributions. Okay. We calculate the OT map between them. Okay. So here you visualize the OT map. Okay. So in this case, this can be treated as an optimal translation problem as well. So we publish in the geometric journal, okay, not in computer vision. Okay. Okay. And also we can calculate, okay, the potential. So here we show, okay, the forward mapping potential. Here we show the inverse mapping potential. Okay. So this is the solution to the Minkowski problem. Meaning, given a positive function defined on the sphere, okay, letter one shown here, given the density function here, we can determine a convex shape. So the Gaussian curvature equal to the given function. Okay. And this method is general for arbitrary dimension. So you can go to any dimension. Okay. Same thing. The inverse is also OT map. So this gives you the inverse. Okay. Linear potential. And these two potential differ by the Randet-Diel, generalized Randet-Diel. Okay. So basically, if we change the geometry to be more complicated, the same picture holds. Okay, so here I show you another example. Okay, suppose we want to design a mirror surface. So this is mirror surface. You have point light here. Okay, so then the point light will be reflected by the mirror. Okay, and shooting far away on the wall. So on the wall, you get a picture. So basically, that means suppose we want to design the mirror such that the reflected image is given. How can you find such kind of mirror? Okay, so this is called a reflector design problem. It is also OT problem on sphere. In this case, the translation cost is more complicated. Okay, but the same principle. Basically, by changing cost function, you can do a lot. Okay, so now we use this theory to analyze WGAN. So for WGAN, basically, we have a generator, okay? We have a discriminator. So the generator calculates a optimal translation map from the white noise, okay, to the fake distribution. So the discriminator compute another OT map between the fake and the real distributions, basically. So you see the real task for WGAN is to compute OT maps, okay, from this point of view. Okay, so that's the formulation. Okay. But then if we do detailed analysis, so we see that the generator computes the translation map from white noise to fake distribution. The discriminator computes the OT map from fake distribution to the real distribution. So therefore, the composition of two maps give you the final result. Okay. So basically, if we come back to this figure, so the generator gives you the map from here to here. So the discriminator gives you the map from here to here. So the composition gives you the map from here to here. So that's the final goal. So namely, one step you over, right? So the computation is fake. It's totally unnecessary, right? So therefore, we claim in the GAN model, the computation, okay, between generator and discriminator actually is unnecessary. Okay, so they should collaborate and share intermediate information, okay, to get a faster convergence. Okay, so that's how diffuse model did. For diffusion model, there's no discriminator, right? Also, flow model. Okay, so for real implementation, so what we have is a bunch of examples. So each example is a discrete point. Okay, so therefore the target measure can be represented by a Dirac measure taking summation. Okay, you have thousands, millions examples. You have this for the target measure. Okay, So in 2D case, we can visualize everything here. So basically you have bound point here. So each point has a weight. So we try to find a partition of the disk such that, okay, each cell here is mapped to one point here. So the area of the cell equal to the weight here. Okay. But then among all possible partitions, we try to find one minimize, okay, the total cost. So that's the setup in discrete case. Okay. So according to Brunier, such kind of partition exists and induced by convex function. So therefore, so each cell mapped to a single point. So therefore, each cell corresponding to one supporting plane. So basically, you have many supporting planes. You want to find the upper envelope. Okay. So you project the upper envelope, you get a cell decomposition here. By adjusting the height of each plane, basically you can change the area for each cell. And then there must be one solution. Okay, the area here equal to the given weight. So that's the big picture. Okay, so the adjustment is highly nonlinear, but the solution exists and unique. Okay, in this case. So then we can answer the question we raised at the beginning. So we know that DN has a lot of capacities. So do they really learn anything or just memorize, okay, the training data? So eventually what we learn is there's a Brunier potential. So here you see YI is the training data. So therefore you definitely memorize everything, okay? But this HI is your computing. So therefore you really learn something new, okay? So this HI give you the data, okay? So therefore for the current deep learning systems, for GAN model at least, okay? So basically the system both memorize and learn, okay, things, okay, from this model. Okay. So then we can analyze the complexity in terms of computation. So I think I can skip this part, okay? So the bottom line is here. So if using this geometric method, okay, the complexity is a polynomial in the number of points, the number of samples, and the exponential, okay, in the dimensionality, okay? So then the convergence rate actually is the epsilon square. Epsilon is the length. So the sampling density control the convergence rate. Okay, this is all you really know between the approximate solution and the real solution. Okay. So another idea is using the fluid. So basically, we can consider a fluid field, okay, in the space. So we know the density, okay, for at every point of time. We know the velocity. So therefore, for each particle, the orbit is governed by this ODE. Okay. So then we can define the mapping for an arbitrary time t. So the mapping governed by this ODE. Okay. So the density evolves according to this ODE. It's a mass preservation law. Okay, we can write down that. Okay. So this is the basic idea for flow. Okay. So if we can design special flow, basically the total kinetic energy is minimized. So the mapping is exactly the OD map. So therefore, this is the OD map from flow point of view. Okay. So using flow, basically each step is linear. I mean, each step is a linear PDE. So we can solve step by step. So in that case, we can use FFT to solve it. Okay. So then last year we proposed using FFT to solve this problem, okay, for low dimensional case, okay. So using FFT, we can improve the speed a lot, okay. But recently, diffusion model is really popular. So basically, diffusion model try to minimize or maximize total entropy for the distribution. So then from the energy, we do variation, we get a vector field. So the vector field is the gradient of log density here, okay. So from this one, we get a classical heat diffusion PDE, okay. But from long-run dynamics, we can add in stochastic component there. So we can put in some random nodes here. Everything becomes stochastic, okay. So basically, the heat diffusion can be modeled using Markov chain, okay. So every step, we have a conditional distribution, which is Gaussian. So this model has some advantages and disadvantages, okay? So the forward heat diffusion is fully controlled by adding noise. You can convert every sample to be Gauss noise. The inverse actually can be approximated by a Markov chain. So each step, the conditional distribution is also Gaussian, as long as the step length is small enough. Okay. So here is some theoretic result. So if the source and the target, both of them are normal distribution. So then this method gives you the OT map. So in the middle, the map is not OT, but the final, the mapping is OT. But this method has a disadvantages. So basically, so if the target measure is not normal, it's not normal. So this method doesn't work, but OT map works, right? So another one, we know the heat diffusion is defined on the image space, not in the latent space. So then this will make things much more complicated. So the killer is this step. So the step length must be very small. Otherwise, you cannot change it using Gauss distribution. How to reduce the number of steps is the key. A lot of people focusing on this one. So now we come to the last problem. So how well does a DL system really learn? Does it really learn everything or have to forget something? So the answer is mode collapsing. So we know that using current GAN model or genetic model, we always generate something looks really ridiculous, not realistic. So this is called a mode collapsing or mode mixture. And again, are very difficult to train, convert really slow. If we want to generate facial pictures, sometimes we get really bad result. So what are the real reason for this? Actually, this can be reduced, to Figari's work. So Figari is a Villani student. He got fused metal. So basically, let me show the example directly. So suppose here we have a unit disk. We have a normal distribution. So here we have another shape. We have a uniform distribution. We calculate OT map. So we map each cell here to the same color cell here. So the area for every cell here equal to 1. But you see there's some special graph inside. So when we cross graph, the mapping jumps from this point to this point. So therefore, the mapping is not continuous. So there's some discontinuity. So the discontinuity is called a singularity. So then Figari they published this paper years ago. So here we can calculate the singularity using our method. From this shape to this shape, from uniform distribution here to here, you can see the Brunier potential. So the Brunier potential is not smooth anywhere. So there will be some special curves. On the curve, the Brunier potential is continuous, but not C1. So when we project this singularity, we get a singularity curve here. So the mapping across the singularities, the mapping is not continuous. So this is a very popular phenomenon, but haven't been studied by mathematicians. So last year we published one result. We show that the singularity actually is a homotopic to the external middle axis of the target. From geometric point of view. But then what is the sufficient condition for the existence of a singularity? So here we can see a lot of singularity. So which is related to the following geometric problem. So suppose a man is walking his dog. So gamma 1 is the orbit for the man. Gamma 2 is the orbit for the dog. So the minimal length for the leash is called a Freitag distance between gamma 1 and gamma 2. So then so we can define something called a normal Freitag distance. Basically, we exhaust all possible mapping gamma 1 to gamma 2. And we measure the corresponding points, the normal, and that gives you something called a normal Freitag distance. So then we get the following theorem. So which claim the following. So if there's no singularity, then the normal franchise distance must be less than pi over 2. So if this distance is greater than pi over 2, there must be singularity. Okay. But in general, we know that the spot for distributions are very complicated. So therefore, the singularity must exist. Okay. So here we can see different singularity here. Okay. So here we increase one dimension. We consider uniform distribution inside the Stanford bunny. So then we map this one to the unit ball. Okay. So you'll see the surface has a lot of foldings. Okay. So the folding basically are the singularities. We'll cross the folding. Okay. The mapping is not continuous anymore. Okay. So this explains the mode collapse. So we know that DNN can only represent continuous mappings. But the result, okay, the OT map is discontinuous. Therefore, DNN cannot represent such kind of mapping. You try to learn something you cannot represent. So you either do not converge or converge to the wrong answer. Okay, so that's the fundamental reason for mode collapse. Okay, so here we can see basically we try to learn MNIST. Okay, we found a mapping from square, okay, to this one. You see many cells here. When we cross the boundary of the cell, the mapping is discontinuous. Okay, so this boundary actually gives you the information about the boundary about clusters. Okay, so then everything is a hypothesis. How can we verify this? So we conduct the following physical experiment. So basically, we use a human photo to train the manifold. Okay, so then we map the manifold to the latent space. We calculate OT map from white noise, okay, to the latent noise. Okay, so we draw a lot of lines here. So each line will become to curve on the surface. So each curve gives you a sequence morphing, okay, on the manifold. So here we can visualize all the curves. So each small window representing one curve, okay, on the manifold. So you see that every image is one point, every morphing sequence is a curve. We'll draw a line, okay, on the latent space, you'll get such kind of curve, okay? So the point is, suppose the curve cross the singularity, basically you will reach the boundary of the manifold. So what's the meaning for the boundary of human facial photo boundary manifold? So what's the meaning for the boundary for human facial photo manifold? So we do not understand the meaning at the beginning until we really conduct such kind of experiment. Okay. So let me show you our result. Okay, so here we see all the curves. Okay. So basically, if we reach to the boundary for human facial photo, okay, so conceptually, we reach to this point. Okay. Okay, this point means there must be some face, okay, which anatomically feasible, okay, reasonable. But in reality, okay, we encounter such a person, the probability is 0, right? So that's the meaning for boundary. Okay. So what kind of face is such kind of characteristic? Okay. So here I show you the result. So we start with a boy with a brown eyes, okay, brown hair, and the end at a blonde here. So in the middle, you'll see a lot of faces. So one eye is blue, one eye is brown. Okay, so this kind of face actually we should say really exists in reality, but the probability to meet such a person is 0. So therefore, you really find the boundary for human facial photo manifold. Okay, so then this is very convincing. Means we really found the singularity. Okay, for this model. Okay, so here we see another example. Okay. Okay, so then how can we avoid mode collapse? So we know that for deep learning, there are 2 tasks: learning the manifold and learning the probability. Okay, so the top part, okay, is okay. The bottom part is a troublemaker. So therefore, we separate, okay, these 2 tasks and use the OT map to represent this one. Okay. So basically, For the top, we use any encoder. For the bottom, we use our geometric voting method to do that. Okay, we see. So here, the mapping is discontinuous. We cannot use the DN to represent this one, but the Brownian potential is continuous, not smooth. We can use the DN to represent this part. Okay, so that's the idea. So using this idea, we can eliminate, okay, all the mode types. Okay. So here we can conduct some experiment. Okay, I can show you the final result here. So here you see we're using conventional VE, conventional WGAN. We have a lot of multiplexing. Using our method, we get a better result. Okay. So here, that's the conventional method. And here, using our method. Okay. So you see, we get a much better result here. Okay. 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 So I will spend a couple minutes talk about our collaboration with the industry partners. Okay. Skip this part. Also, we published several papers. Okay, in the past years on OT. Okay, several pages. And we wrote several books, okay, on different topics. So the final one is about optimal transport. So this is a 500 pages book, but in Chinese. So if you like, you can email me. I can send you a free copy, okay, on this. Okay, we are translating, okay, this one to English. Okay. So we have a lot of industrial collaborators. Okay, Toyota, Siemens, okay, HP. So for cadence, basically we do CAD. So they give us different machine parts, okay, with complicated shape. So then we flatten all the shape to the 2D plane conformally. Okay, that one shown here. So you can see the whole shape is flattened here. Okay, so then we can construct very good matching lines and put back, okay, to the original shape. Okay, that one shown here. So then basically for VE, so this is a CAE company. So basically, we know all the conventional design using nerves. So the nerves is not water tank. For human eyes, we cannot see. But if we really calculate it using IGA, we can see there are a lot of gaps. How can we convert, okay, from bad nerves, okay, to the good nerves? It's a very, very challenging task. Okay, so we're collaborating with CAE. For Siemens, so basically we do medical imaging. So basically, we know colon cancer is a very popular cancer. How can we do virtual colonoscopy? So using CT scan, we can get a digital version for human colon, and we flatten the colon to the 2D plane. The colon is really soft, deformed a lot. So if you scan twice, you get the shape change a lot. So basically, in order to register, okay, the shape, we flatten the one to the plane, and we do the matching on the plane. Okay. So then this patent has been licensed to Siemens for $1 million. So today, the whole population in Japan, the whole population in South Korea using this method and paid by the government. Okay, so it's really popular in North America as well. So this one is with the Toyota. So Toyota tried to design deformable car body. So today, all the cars are rigid. Body cannot be deformed too much. So basically, we design special mechanical parts, okay, and form the shape. So we can change, okay, the local shape such that we can deform the global shape from curved surface to the flat surface. Okay, maybe that will be next generation the sports car. So we did some research with Google. So we know that Google is producing cell phone. So on the cell phone, you have this soft keyboard. So basically, when you input some word, you do not type. You just draw a curve, okay, connecting all the characters. But then how can you recognize the word from such kind of curve? Okay, so this requires a lot of AI. Using our model, we can generate a lot of training data, okay, and we can do recognition. Okay. So also with Google, we do VR, AR. So basically, our lab built this kind of 3D scanner, and using this 3D scanner, we can capture human face with very high resolution. Okay. If you allow me, I can show you some. So this is one example captured using our 3D scanner. You can see okay, the geometry and the skin, okay, details. You can see the pore structure there, okay, the very detailed, okay. So you can see the internal structure for the scanner, okay. So also we can capture, okay, with very high speed and get the real, okay, facial expression change, okay. That one shown here. So we know that for VR, AR, and metaverse, the bottleneck is the 3D data or 4D data. Okay, so instead of using human being to to do modeling, basically we can just capture. Okay, so that one shown here. So you see, it's a 4D data. Each frame is a 3D, and I think this time dimension. You can see the real real expression change. So if this kind of camera is popular, then the whole industry will be changed. The whole metaverse industry, it will be much easier. Okay. Okay. So in summary, so in this work, basically we introduce a geometric understanding for deep learning. So we see that the intrinsic pattern for natural data can be represented using manifold distribution law. Okay. So therefore, the final goal for deep learning has two tasks. One is learning the manifold, one is learning the probability distribution. But then OT basically give you the regression in the Watson space and offer you variational framework. So which lay down the foundation for deep learning. So by linear theory, we know the generator and discriminator, they should collaborate instead of compete with each other. Then the regularity theory for motion pay explain mode collapse. Also, we propose the AEOT model, which can avoid mode collapsing. Okay, so that's it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for the insightful talk. So now we have a couple of minutes for questions.
The Google project which you showed, what is the rendering time of the camera?
Which project?
Google project.
Google project. Okay, so you see everything is raw data. Yeah, and without any touching. Yeah, just what we captured directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we want to apply that data
Right.
for our deep learning tasks,
Right.
so will it be feasible to do that?
Yes, definitely. So basically, using component map, you can map all the 3D surface to planar rectangle. Okay, then using that, you do regular sampling. So basically, you represent every surface. Okay, each pixel representing XYZ and RGB. Okay, so you can use a CNN network.
But the problem with the CNN network still is the rendering time. The rendering time of the normal 3D models are very high.
Right, that's true.
So-
Yeah, for 3D information, yeah, you need to consider more. Yeah, but in principle, basically, you can convert all 3D data to 2D image. You can use an existing method for the analysis. So we will try to build a 3D lab here. Yeah, then you can try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but after projecting the 3D images to the 2D images, still the bottleneck is the rendering time. Like if we use the total 3D images for rendering, the rendering time will be quite high as compared to the 2D images.
Actually, there's some new technology, Unreal file. So basically, they improved the running speed a lot. Okay, so everything is based on 2D representation. Yeah, you can check that out. Yeah, no problem.
Phil, is there any question online? No, okay, cool. We have time for one or two questions.
About the keyboard, do we have a code?
Yes, we have code. Yeah, if you like, we can forward you the code.
Maybe you can send email to her.
Right. So basically, so Google Form try to use this one as input. Currently, people do typing, it's two typing zooming. Basically, we just stroking and draw curves on the keyboard. Okay, so how can you recognize the word using this kind of input? Yeah, this is kind of personalized.
I have a high level question. So at the beginning, in introduction, you mentioned the generative view of deep learning. Essentially, you want to learn the latent concepts and their relation and so on. And then how would you like to connect that part to the remaining problems, including low manifold learning and optimal transport theory?
Right, right. So basically, for deep learning, we try to learn the data manifold in terms of topology, but also probability distribution. And learning the probability distribution, you need an OT, you need optimal transport. Now learning the manifold structure, you need a lot of things from topology. Yeah.
And then how is there kind of a more concrete way to connect those things to the generative view? In the generative view, you want to learn the latent parts, latent variables, right? So is there any kind of connection between the latent variables and learn the distribution or the manifold information?
Yeah, basically the manifold is curved.
Yeah.
So when you flatten it, okay. So basically, such kind of flattening will introduce distortion. So therefore, you change the distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can you represent such kind of distribution? Compensate this kind of flattening. You need to consider. Basically, then basically curve means remainder metric. Yeah. So therefore, you need to consider the remainder metric, consider the probability distribution. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay. Then let's thank our speaker again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.